Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, April 16th, 2020. I'm going to use the other format today instead of the 2020 format. Greg Dworkin standing by so far. Large raft of stories collecting on the byways out here. And some note about possible internet issues. We don't know whether it will affect the Skype calling. But so far, at least the Skype messaging is working, so that's a good sign. If not, we've got a backup in mind, as we discovered yesterday, and a few suggestions from a couple of you in the audience. And now I remember the name of the alternative to Skype, which exists out there, which I once used to communicate with Gideon, and we had another friend of the show make a suggestion and suggest the same thing, and it's we'll see about. Maybe we'll try it out, install it over the weekend, keep it somewhere hidden away as a backup. Now that we've found out that both Google Hangouts and Google whatever they're calling it now, if they change the name on us, and maybe Skype all being phased out in favor of brand new products from the genius minds of Silicon Valley, who are taking away the one that works and replacing it with one that it might not, I don't know. They might have to dig a tunnel underneath Los Angeles or something like that, and make ventilators between now and then. I really have no idea. But here's hoping that Skype works smoothly and doesn't cause us any problems. The president is a crazy goofball. We found out more about that yesterday. He continues to have his daily press conferences, although someone has had the brilliant idea of moving them outside as a bit of a self-limiting feature. It's worked pretty well so far, although they still go on for far too long. So yesterday, as the sun set, and I mean the actual sun setting, I'm not talking about the sun setting effect on Donald Trump, though that's been pretty evident as well. It gets chilly, and yesterday he kind of called things to a close on the early side. I think he only went about an hour and a half yesterday until he got cold. There's the ringing. So an early test of the Skype system says things seem to be working just fine. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm calling a little early just to make sure it works.
Yeah, it seems to be working. What are you gonna hang up and go rest now? Or you wanna
yeah,
start?
I'm done.
Okay.
We're having some internet issues at this end, so it's very different than yesterday. Just a different problem. Some sites are loading, some sites not. So I assume what's happening is, people are staying home from work, and it's just not working the way it's supposed to.
They were before. I don't know what they're now. They just discovered the internet. That's good. All right. Well, I have an internet issue. People are commenting on it. It's terrible.
Oh dear.
I can't believe it. I have to read all this stuff. Yeah. But I was saying less commenting, I guess, from the president as he got chilly and went in. And I think the day before the dark creeping in on him shortened it. So I like the idea of the outside thing. It's probably better for the social distancing and all that. I think the White House also has better control over whether they can turn off a reporter's mic outside. I think they like that, so they might stick with that format for a while. All right.
Well, he's been melting down the past few days from what I'm reading. I stopped watching because I can't stand it.
Yeah. Well.
But apparently, he's just if you were a psychiatrist, you'd have a lot of material to work with. And all those Bill Frist, you can't make a diagnosis from a distance. Well, we're doing telediagnosing now.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. And he's giving us plenty of material.
Good point. You can't do it close. He's making up constitutional powers kind of as he goes along.
So I wanted to talk about that.
All right, yeah, we'll do it. You're here, I'm here.
Yeah, and, this is, I always love to run these things by you because you actually know what I'm talking about when I read it. I just read it and you know what it means.
All right, well, we'll see.
But Jake Sherman from Politico's Playbook has a really interesting morning Twitter today. He always does, but today especially.
He likes to do that. Okay.
And what it says is, Trump can adjourn the Senate to get more nominees through. And I'm not even sure which nominees he's talking about. Is he talking about an inspectors general? Is he talking about judges? He's already got like 180 of them.
Inspectors Clouseau, I think.
Yeah. But Trump can try to adjourn the Senate, but it would be exceedingly hard to understand the absolute absurdity of Trump's argument. Here's what would have to happen.
Yes.
McConnell would have to bring the Senate back. They'd have to vote to adjourn.
Right.
Pelosi would then have to bring the House back, and the House would have to amend the Senate's adjournment resolution, voting against it. And then the Senate would have to disagree with the House amendment. Only then can Trump adjourn Congress, according to experts. But the odds of that are so infinitesimal, they're hardly calculable. Pelosi could ignore the resolution from the Senate, starving Trump of the disagreement he needs to adjourn unilaterally. I'm not even sure why he wants to do that. I guess he wants it to be in recess so he can make recess appointments.
Yes.
And as long as they have these pro forma sessions, he can't do that.
Right.
You say, but this is
Although
privileged.
Yeah.
And thereby gets immediate consideration. Nah, Pelosi can turn off the privilege in a rule with a simple majority vote, and then she doesn't have to touch it. No disagreement, no adjournment for Trump.
That may be so, yeah.
Even more remote.
Uh-oh.
If Trump were to somehow force adjournment, Clause 12C of Rule 1 of the House Rules, added after 9/11, allows Pelosi to bring the House back immediately after Trump adjourns, so he wouldn't have time to recess appointment.
Yes, that's also true.
So Trump doesn't have a lot to complain about. He actually has 193 new judges. 82 executive branch nominations are pending, according to the Partnership for Public Services Political Appointee Tracker, and many are stuck in committee, which means the Republicans don't like them. And by the way, there are pressing issues. One of the pro forma sessions that the president is railing about is over filling the small business monies that have run out.
Oh, yeah, right.
Now, Senate Democratic leadership has been huddling with Treasury to try to solve the issue. The Senate Republicans are mad because if Mnuchin is meeting with Senate Democrats, it's like, hey, we're here. We run the place. How come you're not talking to us? And I have an answer for that with my next piece.
Okay.
No, a deal is not expected. This is new. Before the Senate has its pro forma session today at 3 p.m., which means the fund seems likely to remain empty at least the weekend. And senior White House officials say they would accept hospital money, but I don't know what else the Democrats are holding out for, like, voting rights and post office and vote by mail and making November elections sacrosanct and that and all sort of stuff. So there's a lot going on, even though there's nothing going on.
Yes, many things that should be going on that are the topic of discussion.
Right. And it's interesting because one of the things that happened this morning is I was having a chat with one of my friends who is a infection control doc.
Oh, okay.
Right? And commenting on the fact that the new Navigator survey out this morning, by 20 points, Americans trust WHO on coronavirus more than they trust Trump, 64 to 44. They also trust Fauci more. We know this, right? Oh,
yes, right. Sure. Fauci, yes.
So my frustrated friend writes in and says, I don't care how this works out for any politician. It's the country and the planet we should care about. If the virus spreads in other countries, it's going to be harder to control here. Or do we not remember the last 3 months? He's mad because Trump is threatening to withhold money from WHO.
Yes, right. It's the new hotness.
And I wrote him back and I said, I remind my public health colleagues all the time, politics allows for or interferes with implementation of policy. I'm a policy guy. I only do the politics because the above is always going to be true. And when you say I don't care about the politics, you better care because policy ain't getting done without it. So that's what we're seeing right now in this holdup of how come we can't get money to Americans who need it because the Republicans and the Democrats don't agree on this.
Yes.
And why don't they? Because my Twitter friend Dave Hopkins, who runs this fabulous political site, he's a political scientist himself, called Honest Graft, The Promise and Puzzles of American Politics. I often read from it.
Yes.
And today's is solving the COVID crisis requires bipartisanship, but the modern GOP isn't built for it.
True also.
He wrote the book on asymmetric politics, that the parties are not the same. Okay, and I mean literally wrote the book. That's what it's called, Asymmetric Politics. As my political science colleague Frances Lee points out in Insecure Majorities, her excellent book on the modern Congress, breakdowns in bipartisanship often benefit the party out of power by denying the ruling side the policy achievements and broad popular legitimacy it would gain from productive cooperation.
Yes.
Right, we saw that from the Republicans, tamping down partisan divisions in order to focus on fighting the virus and helping these affected by the deteriorating economy, especially serves the interests of the Republican Party, the current holder of the presidency.
You would think.
Right? Jinx. November's election will serve as an unavoidable referendum on Trump, and citizens' perceptions of his performance in handling the COVID crisis will not only influence the outcome of the presidential race, but also extend to congressional and even state-level contests as well. Under current circumstances, then, we might expect an incumbent president to pursue a strategy of staying above the partisan fray, reassuring Americans, like being presidential in a nutshell is what Dave Hopkins is saying. But Trump's instincts, especially in moments of potential vulnerability, compel him to attack his perceived enemies and ratchet up the general level of conflict. That's because he's a damaged human being. I added that. Hopkins didn't, but he might as well. He has even suggested at times that he will condition federal aid to states and localities on the amount of deference he receives from their elected officials. There's been no apparent attempt by his administration to build credibility with the public outside of 45% or so of Americans who already like and trust the president. It's probably even lower than that. According to Navigator Research, it's more like 37, and then the other 13 are desperately hoping he'll be okay, and so they give him his tepid support, which is dropping as we speak. Trump's personality is what it is, but his combative style is shared by many of his partisan allies. Other major elements of the Republican Party networks, like conservative interest groups, conservative media, are increasingly promoting Trump's position that the threat of the coronavirus is exaggerated and that prevailing social distancing restrictions are excessive. And as a foreshadowing of the next thing we'll cover, of course, is that Michigan protest.
Yes.
Familiar Republican targets, not only Democratic politicians, but also scientific experts in the mainstream media, are under fresh attack from an American right that has become suddenly anxious about the president's chances of re-election during conditions of national economic catastrophe. The contemporary Republican Party has been built to wage ideologic and partisan conflict more than to manage the government or solve specific social problems. So perhaps it shouldn't be shocking that an array of subjects, from what medical treatment might help patients to how important it is to take measures protecting the lives of the elderly, have been drawn into the perpetual political wars. But leading conservative figures like Trump, Hannity, the Heritage Foundation will find it much easier to persuade existing supporters to take their side in a fight with liberal scientists, authorities, etc., than to win over the American public as a whole. Republicans need a party-wide reset of priorities. There's seldom been a time in recent political history when daily partisan point scoring has been rendered more irrelevant. The general election's far enough away that good policy is good politics. The widespread public confidence that will be necessary for normal life to resume can't be jawboned back into existence by daily press conferences, radio broadcasts, or Fox News monologues. And if Republicans lose the battle with the coronavirus, they won't have much of a chance to win the fight against liberalism.
Yeah. Basically.
Right?
Yeah.
If they all die off because they all decided that they're going to have a Betsy DeVos funded, which it was, protest in Michigan against staying at home, which was driven by the people who were there, who had Confederate flags, gun rights, Trump, MAGA flags. I mean, we're talking about Corey Stewart, except this is Michigan, not Minnesota. But it's like, oh, we're the Confederates from Michigan.
Yeah, right. The very famous Confederate contingent from Michigan. And all the neo-Confederates who insist that the federal government has absolute authority to overrule the governors of the states.
Well, they've decided they want to make it a partisan issue, which is incredibly stupid, especially in light of two science journal pieces that are out. One of them is a fascinating one in the New England Journal of Medicine, which literally has a video showing you how, when you speak and say something like stay safe, your droplet particles fly, but if you're wearing a cloth mask, it doesn't.
Okay, right.
So, in other words, the idea of speaking and delivering virus to your friend actually is true. And then the companion piece to that Jeff Dushin from King County, Seattle Health Department sent around yesterday was a piece in Nature, the science journal, suggesting that upwards of 44% of secondary infections with coronavirus come from asymptomatic individuals.
Oh, good.
So on the one hand, asymptomatic individuals can spread this, and on the other hand, wearing masks can help control droplets. And given this information, what happens? Let's have a big crowd gather together denying that the virus exists in Michigan so that 2 weeks from now they can all get sick.
Right, exactly. And it's okay for us to be out here. I'm asymptomatic.
And we're all facing the same direction,
See?
so when those droplets fly, it's not going to hit me.
And, of course, they're not. Oh, there goes some droplets in the background of my house. My goodness.
Yeah, but that's... oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, right. Also, I'm like around the corner and everything.
So
far, so good.
It's a horrible but true example of I'm afraid that if things go the way they're going, we're clearly going to lose.
Yes.
And therefore, we have to do something to change the equation. So let's fund some AstroTurf protests, which will prove the point that everybody's against what you're doing, except they're not. And besides, we're all going to get sick now. I mean, it's just stupid stuff. And it exactly gets to the point of what Dave Hopkins is saying. The purpose of the protest is strictly politics. It has nothing to do with actually trying to solve problems. No. And it's not going to persuade the rest of the public that that's what's going on. Yeah, no. And you know what? He's already in trouble in Michigan, and this isn't going to help.
No. Well, lots packed into that one. I think maybe Trump is right in his assessment that the virus is brilliant. I will say the virus appears to have an excellent understanding of our political news cycles. The people who came out and protested and spat all over each other yesterday won't get sick for 2 weeks, and that's an eternity in our news cycle. Everyone will have forgotten how they got sick, and of course no one tracks, Joe Schmo from Michigan to see whether he gets sick. So you have to be an influencer and videotape yourself licking a toilet for anybody to be interested in whether you eventually get sick.
Right. Well, we have talked about how things are not going so well for Trump. I mentioned that Navigator survey. But other things in the Navigator survey that are also of interest throughout the polling, says Nick Gorovich, the pollster who's associated with this, we've seen the early failures as the top Trump concern. Try saying that 3 times fast. 2 versions of that, downplaying and failure to act, have always raised similar amount of concern. So we asked which bothered people more. What did they say? Downplaying.
Yes, okay.
Well, that's important because that's an ongoing sin. Failure to act is baked in. Can't undo that.
Right, true.
But he's compounding it by not doing the right thing even now. Again, going back to the Michigan thing. Is that downplaying? Absolutely. Are people bothered by that? Yes, they are.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on that people are bothered by. But okay, if that's a top... You know what? I didn't get to... not tested in here, and I guess... Well, maybe we have to wait for stories to sink in, but these are 2 major facets of it, failure to act and downplaying. Then there has to be, I think, eventually we have to start polling on overt hypocrisy in it, like, stock sales, selling things short on secret information. 2, telling people masks aren't necessary while you're scrambling. That's another story of the day. Scrambling to buy masks
or
for
how
yourselves.
How about Ivanka telling everybody you have to stay home, and then she flies off to New Jersey?
Right. Going to go have a Seder in the mansion at the golf course in New Jersey instead of... By the way, this is apparently a big problem, and the governor of Michigan, in addition to her various stay-at-home orders, has had to issue a clarification for the Grosse Pointe crowd. Stay-at-home means one of your homes, not flit between mansions and country homes and cabins, etc.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And
we'll be trapped here in the country home.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that was an initial problem for people who were escaping New York and going to their second homes. But I guess if you escape and go there, you shouldn't have in the first place. But if you did, stay there.
Stay there.
Yeah, we have a lot of people are going between, second, third, fourth homes, or Betsy DeVos maybe between yachts, possibly. But that doesn't count to home.
Here's where the details of it. Does it really matter? I mean, if you're only by yourself and you're not seeing anybody on the way, does it really make that much of a difference? Here in the tri-state area, it's like, whatever, just don't do stupid things. Don't get on the subway or don't go grocery shopping without a mask. Ned Lamont, governor of Connecticut, issued you have to wear a mask if you're in public, like groceries, order yesterday, along with Andrew Cuomo. Basically, the tri-state area is doing things in coordination, so I'm sure New Jersey did something similar. But Gorovich goes on to say, on Trump's temperament, we've seen a lot of these critiques resonate, but the blaming of others instead of taking responsibility critique resonates most when people are asked to choose which one you dislike the most. So they've done, which of these 2 things do is Trump worst at? So
I can't
he's
tell
worse at not taking it seriously and blaming others instead of taking responsibility. And then what specific policy, if you had a choice, are you really most upset with? It's lack of PPEs, personal protective equipment, and testing is very concerning. And they don't like the fact that he fired the inspector general. So that's today's poll. But interestingly, buried in there, this is the third day in a row that his approval rating is underwater for coronavirus response. It's 50 against 47 for what he's doing. And it's the first time he's hit 50% against 3 days in a row. So it's been like tied the entire time. And then one time, early in April, he actually had a 50 was favored and 47 against what he was doing. The rest of the time it's been basically tied. In the last 3 days, that's falling away. Just as the interest in his press conferences are falling away as he melts down even more. And, a lot of this is simply unsustainable. Again, going back to Dave Hopkins' point. This is built for partisan function. And this is something, I've been beating this drum for like 3 years. He can do things that are resonating with his base, and it doesn't matter because his base isn't big enough, and now we're seeing it. And so he doesn't know what else to do. He's never been able to grow the base. He's never been able to get more people involved. That's why I think he's going to lose in November. Not a guarantee, but, I think that, again, that people are even starting to talk about the fact that, he may even get blown out. I've seen it. Josh Kraushaar said that yesterday.
All right.
I mean, it's about time. But the fact of the matter is, this is not playing well when people actually want a decent response from the president right now. Most people, not his base. His base loves it when, like, oh, well, we're going to kill off everybody in the country. That'll show the liberals. Fine. But it's not fine. But that's not going to win an election. You have to recruit other people to help you win that election, and you ain't doing it with what you're doing now.
Okay.
Here's another one. Trump sent out stimulus checks. E.J. Dionne writes, when Americans see Trump's name on those stimulus checks, most won't regard him as their benefactor. They'll see a weak, desperate, and selfish man who pretends that their tax money is his own. And Trump knows the political trouble he's in. That's his column today, which is called Trump's Bad Check. Funny thing is, a lot of this is direct deposit, so you don't even see the signature.
Yes, that's true.
And then you blow through it, and then you don't have enough money, and then, like, you're supposed to thank him. I don't think that's how it's going to work.
Mnuchin says it's going to last you 10 weeks.
Yeah, so he says.
So it's not. Just,
all right.
I didn't want to panic anybody there.
Julie K. Brown, writing from Miami Herald, says, Florida Governor DeSantis is considering giving nursing homes immunity provisions to protect them against civil lawsuits. That way, the families of all the people dying can't sue for negligence.
Right. So you can just stack them up.
Didn't he just try to bail out the WWE? Didn't he say wrestlers are essential? But that didn't work out either.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do stuff that is just sheer, blatant, politics, it doesn't work out. It's not brilliant. You can't hide from this by trying to distract people by doing this. Even our lovely press doesn't get distracted for more than a couple of minutes these days with the news cycle being so fast. Because as soon as a story like this comes out, the number of people that were found, dead in a New Jersey nursing home also gets told. Yep. And so you look at the one and you look at the other and say, wait a minute, that's not convincing me to vote for Republicans.
No. Yeah, the New Jersey story. I imagine there's a similar story. I guess maybe Ron DeSantis is probably getting out ahead of it, but I guarantee you there are similar stories in Florida.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's a conspiracy not to tell people how many people are actually sick and dying in Florida, but I will tell you that my doctor friends are just telling me those numbers from Florida ain't right. Something smells.
Yes. Well, now we know what it was in New Jersey.
Yeah. So there's something not right about the numbers being reported. So it's probably higher than what they're saying. And when you start to not trust the numbers, then what else don't you trust?
Yeah, everything.
Now we got South Dakota, and they've got, of course, their Smithfield pork processing plant, which is a huge cluster. There's 1,168 cases, a big number for a small state like South Dakota. And their governor is pretending that there's nothing wrong and it's not really a problem.
Is it 1,100 statewide? Is that what it was, or is it
1,168 total cases in South Dakota, and 934 of those are in the one county which includes the Smithfield Foods pork processing plant.
Okay, yes. So I had heard yesterday there was 300 or so workers at the plant.
300 at the
I
plant,
believe that.
900 in the county that they
makes sense.
work at,
9,000,
and that's 900 out of 1,100 cases overall in the state.
That works out about.
That's a
as
hot
thought.
spot. That's that's a fair designation for it.
Right. Okay, I got it. That's.
And remember, 44% asymptomatic
real.
spread. You don't know what else is in the community unless you're testing.
Right.
And so, the whole idea that, it's just the blue states, forget that. That's not what's happening. That was like last week.
Right.
Or the week
True.
before.
Yeah. Well, the virus, as far as I know, isn't interested. Certainly not interested. Probably can't tell what your registration is.
Yeah, well, I've been yelling at this virus, right? Because this virus appears to be interested in policy, but it isn't interested in politics. And I keep telling it, look, without the politics, nothing's getting done. And the virus is, I know, right?
Yeah. Right. Well,
it's good for me, so I'm okay with that.
This is part of the discussion yesterday afterwards, after your segment, was, not only does the virus not care, but I mean, dead people are dead no matter who they were or what the registration was, or whether or not you want them to go back to work, or whether they died from COVID or something else. There's a lot of people that are going to be missing from the economy when you try to bring it back or turn it back on. And,
well, if they don't trust what you're doing, they're not going to show up. And some of them, obviously, as you were pointing out, can't show up.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still having internet issues here. I see websites that simply won't load, and I don't know why. But this one is about Trump's trying to recruit business people to help him to take cover and be blamed if he opens the economy up and it doesn't work out. And the business folks are furious. They got on the phone with Trump and said, we ain't doing this unless you have testing. Where's the testing? And that's not what Trump wanted. Do more after the break.
Okay. Well, that is an exciting gambit for him. We'll see how it works out. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So far, so good on the Skype front. Greg Dworkin's still with us. Let's resume our discussions. We haven't found out yet whether the whole thing has worked out. We need more than the 2 minutes, as it turns out, so we'll wait and see. We'll see what happens.
Well, the whole thing working out, that's like November, right? That's the test?
Yes.
These are just the quizzes?
I guess probably don't count out January 2021 as a key moment either. All right. I mean,
between April 2nd and April 8th, we averaged 148,000 tests a day. Between the 9th and the 15th, which is yesterday, we averaged 147,000. So where are the millions of tests anybody can get them?
Oh, they're all over the place.
You need those tests if you really want to open the economy up, and you cannot open the economy until people are confident that they have the virus somewhat under control, or at least they have a plan. We don't, they don't, and so the economy stays closed, and so there's another number of millions of people who are out of work as of the numbers today. There's something more than 20 million, 22 million people this month out of work. This is Depression-era numbers. And that's what's panicking Trump, because he knows that that's not going to reflect well in terms of his being reelected in the fall, and everything that he has done from the moment he was president, but certainly during this coronavirus problem, catastrophe, crisis, whatever you want to call it, has been performative. he wants to play president. He gets on TV and plays president, and he doesn't understand how come that's not working.
Yeah.
He's not being president. He's not taking the steps that a president would take to make sure that we're safe and that things are working properly. He doesn't even understand why that's important. It's all about how he looks on TV, and that's why he wants these press conferences every day. That's why they shouldn't be covered live. And another week of stupid is not going to help the economy get back to where he needs, which is going to hurt him for his reelection. And for some reason, he doesn't really seem to totally understand the cause and effect. He understands the effect, but he doesn't understand the cause. And so you're not seeing him take the steps you need. And that's why when you convene this faux panel to reopen the economy, first he had Jared and Ivanka, and
but then they left
Nugent and who else? He had Kudlow, a bunch of other people, Mark Meadows, people who really didn't understand what was going on. I mean, he could have had any bobblehead there and it wouldn't make any difference. And he got such bad feedback from that because he didn't have any public health people on it that he stopped even referring to that anymore.
Yes.
And then did a business CEO council, except didn't tell the business CEOs they were on it until he called.
That's amazing.
And they were
Publishers
mad.
Clearinghouse of.
We didn't agree to be on this. Well, you're on it now. So what should we do?
Right.
Because I'm doing this entirely so you can take the blame in case things go wrong. Washington Post story saying that.
Candid
And the
Camera
CEO
Council.
said, well, I didn't want to be here, but since you called me anyway, testing.
Yeah. 1, 2,
And
3.
Trump said, why aren't you on mute?
Right.
I told you to be on mute. I'm here to talk to you. I'm not here to
Quiet.
listen to you.
Quiet. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? And so everybody was
Phone
upset,
rings,
and that's the
you're on
story
a
today.
panel.
So again, it's one of those, I've constructed it for the visuals, for the optics of it, and even that is not working. It's just making me look worse. What's going on here, Jared? Fix it. That was your idea.
he was
Why am
busy.
I doing this?
I don't know. He's really something, that Jared. He gets himself on the council, suggests you reopen the economy, and then just, I guess gets on a plane and flies to New Jersey. And then he's still important when he comes back. I don't understand why Trump stands for that. But I guess it's, whatever my daughter wants, that's that.
Right. Anyway, so that's what's been going on. None of it good. And again, I was looking at the Trump polling is actually not all that solid, and that message is sinking in. And as of yesterday, in the MSN tracking poll, Trump had actually fallen below 40%. I would tell you what it is today, but again, the internet is not cooperating today, so half the sites don't seem to be loading properly. There's nothing wrong with the computer speed. I am hooked up to the internet. I'm having no problem with Skype today. It's
Okay.
all these other sites, so
Well, I want
can't
that to work.
quite figure
So
out why.
I guess if you give us the links, we'll dig them up and show them to people and make them homework.
Right. Well, I can't tell you how exciting it is and what they mean because I can't see them, but I will
Maybe
give you
I
the link.
can. I'll open it and I'll say, "Oh, is this exciting? I wish you were here to see this."
Okay, there you go. Let's see if you can open it and see if it works.
I don't know. Well, let's see. Greg is typing. That's what it says right here in Skype.
Exactly. Because it's there but not going through. But luckily
I
the
get you.
phone part of it,
Even worse. Okay. Yes,
the audio part of it.
that is true. So, but I assure you, there it is. Okay, MSNBC. All right, let me see. Does it open for? It opens for me. I have awesome internet, as it turns out.
Yay. So what are we doing for this morning on the,
I don't know.
what
I
kind of
can't
job
read
is Trump
this.
doing?
If the election were held today, all of these hexagons would be
No,
different
those are the
colors.
states. You can always look at Wisconsin and tell us what's going on there.
Okay.
You hover over it, and that's how you
I
see what the results
so
are.
what? So is it what we've got? If the election were held today, Biden or Trump? Is that what we're asking now?
Yeah, Trump.
And then we have,
The election were held today. What's
we got Trump or Biden. We got Republicans or Democrats. I guess for Congress. We got an approval, disapproval with the.
approval, disapproval? That's what I was
Okay.
looking for.
All right. Let's see. Oh, that's the one where they shade around the line so it looks blurry and it hurts my eyes. Here we go. 416. He is 39% approve, 57% disapprove. They've forked away from each other a little bit.
That's what I'm
There
talking
you go.
about.
That's what you keep pointing to. But once again, that's a pretty steady line for a long time. But I don't know. 57 disapprove seems like maybe the highest it's been in a while, even though it only moves by fractions of a point.
Right, or as we like to say, the poll that doesn't move sometimes moves.
Yeah, I guess so. The blurry part is the margin of error. That's the part that's giving me eye strain. So I don't know. Right. But yeah, 57, 39. What kind of differential was that? That's 7,
18.
18. Yeah.
That's not really good numbers. My Connecticut friend Colin McEnroe, who's a local columnist who I think should be national, he's very funny sometimes, points out Kellyanne Conway on Fox News says, this is COVID-19, not COVID-1, folks.
Oh, yes, right.
Implying that the World Health Organization did a bad job despite all the practice they had. But a little-known fact, Colin says, many people wounded in the Bowling Green massacre died of secondary COVID-7 infections.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I saw Karen Tumulty make that, crack that joke almost right away. COVID's 1 through 18 were all in Bowling Green. We mentioned that yesterday. I don't know whether she really seriously just didn't understand or thought that was a dumb-sounding enough talking point to resonate with their base. I don't know. By the way, looking back at the approval, disapproval, and I keep commenting on the blurriness, that the margin of error is what the blurriness around the actual average line, the estimate line, tells us. The last time, though, that there was, this is another one of those fun things that the shading can tell you, the last time there was overlap in even the margin of error for approval, disapproval was on January 23rd. And since then, they haven't really come very close. The closest they came recently was end of March, around the 25th, but they didn't actually overlap. But yeah, in other words, even with the margin of error, he's underwater and has been for 3 months.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I was having trouble accepting that he was having a rally bump, or that what people were, look at Gallup says he's at 49. Yeah, well, I don't think that's right.
I guess that would have been the end of the March time, the rally idea, when he began to do things. But yeah, that's so. It's been 4 months since even taking the lowest possible number of disapproval within the margin of error and the highest possible approval within the margin of error, even where the came close and overlapped. So okay, that's something to think about. We don't talk about that one very much,
right?
Because it doesn't mean
so. There you have it.
That's dumb. Yes.
This is funny. An OANN poll
yes,
gives President Trump a 52% approval rating in North Carolina and a 7-point lead over Sleepy Joe Biden, says Donald Trump this morning. The president also helps other Republican candidates, including Tom Tillis, who has a 4-point lead over his Democrat rival. That's one. That's the Tillis number is what we call a control.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how you know the whole poll is bogus.
Yeah. Well, OANN should tell you something, but the fact that they only came up with 52% in North Carolina.
And that's the best they could do.
Yeah, I guess they thought they would be
right.
laughed
So
at.
my conservative friend Michael Friedman tweeted this and added, I'm going to go ahead and presume that OANN is not the gold standard of polling.
No. You'll recall.
I think that's a good bet.
That is almost certain to be true. OANN, by the way, they're the ones with the, One
American News Network. They're the Russian propaganda outlet.
The newest one. And they are the conspiracy theorists who, it's interesting that they polled North Carolina. North Carolina is where OANN says the COVID-19 virus was developed in a secret bioweapons lab funded
Well, that's funny.
by,
I was just reading this tweet from the investigators, the science folks, who said it clearly did not come from a lab, and that's been established.
Oh.
But that's okay,
Oh, because also yesterday at the press conference, the president was asked by I don't know who, but I think foreign press actually, what have you been hearing about the rumor that they absolutely did come from a lab? So this time the question was about a lab in Wuhan, China, and that it was lax security protocols that led to an infection and then had it carried out of the lab. And, he did the whole, I don't want to say that's what happened, but that's what happened. The question was actually, did you talk to President Xi about this in your phone call, and what did he have to say about the rumor that was the case? And, the president of China is not going to talk to him about that or admit anything like that. And Trump said, I don't want to tell you. But that's what happened. So he's
Well,
sticking
here's
to
a
that
piece in the New York Times. University president who got his job only through nepotism concocts multiple false explanations for why he's putting his students at risk. Anybody want to guess which Jerry Falwell this is? Junior or senior?
Are they both alive?
No.
Oh, okay. Then the
Hint, only one of them is still alive.
and it wasn't COVID.
And double hint, that's this week.
Yeah, okay, true. All right, well, Liberty University in a lot of trouble.
Falwell focuses on critics as coronavirus cases near his university grow. How could that be?
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with their university, I'm sure. He's also
Here's
suing
Here's the thing about the
newspapers.
virus not caring. Jerry Falwell Jr. has tried to have journalists arrested as he maintains he's been unfairly maligned, but the coronavirus keeps spreading around Liberty University. Go figure.
It is weird. I also read recently, not only did they try to reopen, but there was the journalists he's suing were documenting the fact they were talking to the students and the faculty, and the story they revealed was that the university kept everyone in the dark about the virus too, while every other university in the country was telling kids, well, we don't know exactly what's going on, but wash your hands at the very beginning, at least, and then, of course, started to send them home. Liberty University made no effort whatsoever to educate people about the virus, its existence, and its spread, and they are furious, and so are the parents, and so is the faculty.
These things have a way of coming home to roost, and I'll finish my segment for today with this one piece here from the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Almost everybody I know is out of work. How the coronavirus has done something or other. Since it won't load, I can only look at the tweet. More than a quarter of Michigan's workforce is now trying to obtain unemployment aid, state officials said this week. But the pull quote from Josh Kraushaar that caught my eye is this: Michigan GOP strategist, the president has a big problem.
Yes.
The more it can be laid at his feet that we know it was coming, that he dawdled, he's going to lose votes in this state, Michigan, and he doesn't numerically have the freedom to do that.
No,
and that's true in a lot of places. Don't forget his brilliant political genius campaign that won the election in 2016 by the skin of Jim Comey's teeth was 80,000 votes in 3 states. He does not numerically have the freedom to do that.
Those people are dead.
Or out of work.
Right. Very likely. Yeah. All right. So
I'm just saying,
he's doing his things.
The thing that riles me more than anything else these days is the Chuck Todds of the world who look at this situation and say, Trump's going to try to blame China, and it just might work. It's not freaking working. Stop it.
Well,
it's
yeah.
not working.
I hope not. But
it's
does
not
continue.
going to work. When you're out of work, you're not going to say, oh, well, I'm blaming China, not Trump. That's not how it works. It's never worked that way. What is wrong with you? Why are you even thinking that?
I don't know.
And there's no data to support it. Stop.
I don't know. I guess we're conditioned to see him get away with things that he should never get away with.
Right. And you're part of the reason that he's getting away with it because you keep, taking stuff like that and writing puff pieces in Politico for his political folks who think that they themselves are in trouble. And so they give you these off-the-record interviews about how wonderful I did during this time. And no, stop propping them up, and why don't you just call it the way it is? It's great to see reporters actually hit him the way the CBS reporter did the other day. Well, what were you doing in February? Why do you keep talking about January? What did you do in February? You didn't do anything in February.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
I know. His own video doesn't say he did anything. He released a new list of all the awesome things that he did in February, and as it turns out, they are mostly I talked to somebody, and then they talked to me, and then I sent a letter to somebody saying I'd like to talk to you, and that's pretty much it.
And then I put them on a committee. I didn't tell them they were on, and then they got mad at me and told me to do the opposite of what I wanted them to.
Right.
I did a lot of that.
Right. They told me
I didn't
actually
do
to
that
do
until
something to
April.
myself that might actually assist in spreading the virus, actually, to put it mildly. But, look, here's another conspiracy theory circulating. The Russians have one as well. And I guess the Russian idea is, that COVID-19 was created by the U.S. in an effort to control the world.
Right.
It's working pretty good.
Right. And here's another one. Almost 30% of Americans believe the conspiracy theory that the virus was created in a lab, according to Pew Research, raising concerns about the global spread and impact of corona-related disinformation. I shrug my shoulders. 30% of Americans will believe anything.
That's true, too.
That doesn't particularly impress me. When you get it to 60%, that bothers me.
It's it's bothersome that it happens.
23% of Americans thought Nixon should have stayed in office. I mean, this is a baseline number, 23, 25, 30%. That'll believe the dumbest things in the world.
I imagine the same number of people.
What do you do with that? Well, invest more money in schools.
Yes, but not labs, because you know what they're doing with those.
Yeah,
so
I suppose.
No labs.
Anyway, that's the state of the world right now. I'm just telling you, a lot of stuff is simply not working. And yes, it could work much better. The government could coordinate a lot of this, including testing. They could have a clear program that says that once testing is robust and quick, then we can do case tracing, we can do testing, and we can use selective mitigation strategies to reopen the economy. The way to reopen the economy is to get a better handle on the virus. That would be the proper tack to take, and the federal government has a role in this. Instead, Trump is going for performative rather than substantive actions, and even the performances aren't very good and not getting good reviews. And because of all of that, he's going to lose in November.
Okay.
Why is that important? Why aren't we talking about that? Because politics and policy, you cannot have policy without politics. And until you get rid of Trump, this is not going to get better. And I don't know how you can just have a more stark example of how that is exactly true. And it's not just a partisan saying that.
Yes. All right. Well, I don't know what to do. It's hard to get through the day when you have to wait.
30% of the public doesn't buy that. Well, fine.
That's true. And they never do.
70% are going to vote this jerk out.
I hope. Well, that's the way numbers are supposed to work.
Yep.
70 is more than 30. All right. Well, we'll cling together. The 70 of us can tell the 30 that they're crazy. And I imagine this is a long stand. I think everything that any illness that crops up that's new, probably. Yes, even Abby thinks that it was lab created. That's an old trope that goes back to. I mean, I'm sure it predates AIDS even, although maybe most people didn't know about labs creating viruses, all that long ago. But it seems familiar anyway. Okay. Well.
Well, take care. I'm done.
Thank you. Abby's not.
See what's going on there. We're actually having some non-social distancing at the front door, so we'll see what that's about. All right. Take care.
Get him, Abby. All right. Very good. You do the same. Chase him away. Stand your ground, Greg. Okay. Good luck. All right. Jumping in then with all the rest of the happenings of the day. Let's see. Let me throw you this one. This is an interesting one. I think I'm getting cranky and short-tempered about some of these stories out here. But Kate Sherrill sent me a light piece, comparatively speaking, about how the giveaway of free merchandise, dresses as it happens, by Reese Witherspoon's online fashion line. I realize now I've just got into the line thing here twice. Has gone awry, except this bugs me a little bit, like the story we read yesterday, which promised news about how the masks, the N95 masks ordered by the Green Bay area, Brown County, was it Wisconsin police department, were grabbed up by the feds, which upon reading the actual story, we realized that what it wasn't, as the headline promised, how those masks ended up in the hands of the feds, but rather that the masks ended up in the hands of the feds. Similarly, in a close parallel here, how I wouldn't even have thought to read this story, but Kate suggested it. I took a look, and you know what? It's interesting. Just what's happening out there. That's sort of related, derivative of the coronavirus thing. And here's how. You'll see in a minute. It says right up at the top of the story that this is about coronavirus. In thecut.com, which is, I don't know what, style, self, culture, power. That's what's up there at the top. Anyway, we've read from The Cut before. Claire Lampin offers this otherwise interesting piece. I don't know about the headline. How Reese Witherspoon's Dresses for Teachers giveaway went awry. Having read it, I'll say this. Long story short, this is a story about the fact that Reese Witherspoon's Dresses for Teachers giveaway went awry. It's clear what in what fashion, no pun intended, it went awry. I was sort of looking for, okay, now that I know what's gone awry, who did that? And why did they make the decision they made in order to, push this thing forward? Because it seems so obviously dumb. That's the story I was looking for. But if you can report that, you're an awesome reporter. I mean, this is news. It happened. It's interesting. Nothing wrong with sharing it. That's why I'm going to share it. Just so you, I guess, for no other reason than, I guess, beware of the things that are out there that, may or may not end up being a huge breach of people's personal private information or exploitation or what have you. But I guess keep in mind that even when it would look terrible to find out publicly that you were just being exploited under cover of, sympathy for your fight against the coronavirus scourge, you were in fact taken advantage of. But so I guess we'll say it at least serves as a warning. So here's the deal. I guess long story short, just so we can get through it pretty quickly, is, all right, she's got a fashion line called Draper James. I don't know why. There's probably a story behind it. It's probably explained to you on the website. You can go and take a look. Earlier this month, Reese Witherspoon's clothing line Draper James announced a special offer for teachers. Just a little something to show the country's 3 million plus educators how much their extra efforts during the coronavirus stay-at-home orders were appreciated. And so they sent out this. I guess it was an email. No, it's an Instagram post. Maybe it went out in email as well. We want to say thank you. An April 2nd Instagram post from Draper James read, don't read Instagram. There's the answer. During quarantine, we see you working harder than ever to educate our children. To show our gratitude, Draper James would like to give teachers a free dress, which is great for dress-wearing teachers. Right? Just one problem. According to the New York Times, the brand only had 250 dresses to give. And while the announcement did mention, and they really could have been better about this, an application and winners, while it did include an offer valid while supplies last line, many teachers who sent in their details simply thought they'd receive a gift as advertised. But with fashion brands around the world donating millions to the coronavirus fight, and with Witherspoon being a celebrity, the promotion got a lot of media attention. The Times reports that the applications page crashed almost immediately. It's not a huge problem in the grand scheme of things. Websites like that will crash, and, it's a dress. I wish people would get the dress, but they won't. The Times reports that the application page crashed almost immediately, and by the time it closed, it had logged almost 1 million entries, which is amazing because they started out by saying that there are 3 million plus educators. I wonder how much the plus is. Because if 1/3 of the teachers in America said, you know what, Draper James, free dress, let's go get it. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. I just don't know how word spreads so quickly that you could really get that many people to do it. So here's the actual Instagram post. Dear teachers, we want to say thank you. During quarantine, see you working harder than ever to educate our children. To show our gratitude, Draper James would like to give teachers a free dress. To apply, that doesn't really necessarily tell me much. Complete the form at the link in bio. That's what it says. Link in bio before this Sunday, April 5th. 3 days. Offer valid while supplies last. Then it says winners will be notified on Tuesday, April 7th. That's the first eyebrow raised to me. Winners? What? What do I have to win? So let's see. Then some emojis. A pencil and a notebook and a dress. Emojis. Times, like X. The Draper James team know a teacher who deserves a pick-me-up? Forward this post or tag your favorite educator in comments. Emoji, Apple emoji there. Hashtag DJ loves teachers. Anyway, the label, which employs fewer than 30 people, reportedly scrambled to clarify to applicants that Draper James was merely raffling off apparel to a limited number of teachers. That does not really come across. We felt like we moved too quickly and didn't anticipate the volume of the response. Marissa Cooley, the senior vice president for brand marketing and creative at Draper James, told The Times. We were really overwhelmed. It was way more volume than the company had ever seen. We expected the single-digit thousands, which, of course, would have disappointed the single-digit thousands minus 250. So it doesn't tell me much. According to The Times, Draper James emailed applicants last weekend to let them know it was making an unspecified donation to help educators support their remote classrooms, maybe, and that the company was, quote, actively working on expanding our offerings, both internally and with outside retail partners who were also inspired by your stories and want to join in honoring your community. But the backlash was nonetheless swift. Online, educators said they'd been asked to provide photos of their school IDs and personal information, including email addresses, only to be rewarded with discount codes. Which, it's nice, but there's a problem with that, too. As one Twitter user pointed out, Draper James dresses fell outside her budget even at 20 to 30% off. Another accused the brand of preying on educators to build its email list by misleading us with a gimmick. Those tweets are embedded here. The snafu also left some teachers upset with Witherspoon, whose reputed net worth lives somewhere in the $240 million neighborhood, and who, per the Times, loved the original giveaway idea. She always seemed like such a down-to-earth celebrity. Laura Deckman, a Rochester, New York public school teacher, told the paper, she is a really strong brand that is about being a mom and a regular person. But the subsequent confusion, Deckman added, felt like a Marketing 101 fail. The intentions were good, but the execution was terrible. That is likely the case. I just would like to know about that execution. And it's not in this story, and I don't blame anybody for it. That was just an over-promising headline. It's a perfectly fine story under the headline of, hey, guess what? This happened at the Reese Witherspoon. Oh, I'm sorry. I've used the wrong. I should be using the 1-minute break music rather than the 2-minute break music. It makes a difference, believe me. We'll see what happens when I use the wrong music. All right, well, but thanks for sharing it. I don't know. I liked it as a distraction. I still wanted to use the story. We could all use some distractions around here, even though in the end the distraction is, here's another thing that's going to piss you off about coronavirus. That's how bad it is these days. We got to distract you with that stuff. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're going to use our next hour taking a quick run around the rest of the stories that I socked away for you. I'm going to have to change the order up a little bit because the chronology of them doesn't make a great deal of sense. So let's hop around a little bit at first. Here's news from the New York Times. A nice long read that we could spend a couple minutes on, but we will handle this way. Headline, Navy may reinstate fired captain to command of Roosevelt. Admiral Michael Gilday has indicated that he may reinstate Captain Crozier, who was removed from command after pleading for more help fighting a coronavirus outbreak on his ship. That's good news. We'll see whether Trump tries to intervene in any way or whether he regrets that one and is just going to let it go. I'm not certain what the authority of the Navy is as against a presidential insistence on his dismissal, but so far Trump has never bothered to put his personal stamp of approval on that one. He might be better advised to say, let's blame that one on the now resigned acting Secretary of the Navy and simply say, I never heard about it. He never told me about it. If the Navy says this is the right thing to do, then I trust them. I love admirals. He hasn't said that yet, but we'll find out. I did see the other day, we were reported the first death among the crew from COVID-19. There are now, several hundred sailors been sickened by coronavirus on the ship. There was some reporting earlier that conditions were, and I think we expected this might be the case, and even Crozier thought that this might be the case. The conditions of the recovery for the sailors there on Guam has been less than ideal. But again, I think the captain's initial concern was that, just landing a carrier here and saying help is going to overwhelm the resources available on Guam. It's not their fault. They're perfectly well situated in dealing with their own we hope, although maybe COVID-19 spreading widely there would overwhelm them the way it would any other of our states or territories. But adding a couple thousand people already ill and in critical condition isn't going to help anything. But I guess the sailors, it's no vacation for them. We'll say that. But yeah, there was already talk about his possible reinstatement. And also I saw a story the other day we didn't share, but perhaps we can double back and find it. It might even be mentioned in this story that when Captain Crozier made the decision to send this letter, he apparently did. We all guessed that he knew that it might mean the end of his career, even though it was never apparently his intention to leak the story, but he was fired by the acting Secretary of the Navy, whose name we always mistook as Moldy. It was a Modley, I think, but Moldy sounds a lot more like him. And he of course accused the captain of intentionally leaking the story. We don't know whether that's true, but the reporting was that the senior officers of the ship, I guess at some point, offered to put their names on the line and their careers on the line to back the captain up in this. And the reporting was, and this sounds very nice, very honorable, that the captain said, no, you keep your name off of this. I know what's going to happen with this, and this could cost me everything, and I'm not going to have that happen to you. I appreciate the offer of backup, but I don't need it in order to get what I need done with this letter. So do yourselves a favor and stay off it, and they did. And it's about everything you would expect from, the vision you probably have in your mind's eye of an honorably conducted campaign by the captain of an American warship. So good news all around there, I guess. At least hopeful news that he might one day be reinstated. I guess we'll all hope for that one. Until later on, we'll find out that Captain Crozier has some terrible secret in his past that we'll all learn to regret. It's not hero worship. It just sounds like the right thing to do in this particular case. I should put up one of those signs on a table and sit out there, right? Captain Crozier deserves to be reinstated. Change my mind. We'll see. That online meme might work out here. All right, skipping around a little bit more. Let me start with the report from The Hill, which is almost certainly borrowing the report from elsewhere. We'll see if we can find out where. But Pennsylvania, Dateline, Pennsylvania, where, like everybody else, we're all under stay-at-home orders. The Republican-controlled legislature finds an opportunity to score political points as against the Democratic governor, who, as many Democratic governors around the country have done, has been doing the right thing, telling people to stay at home to limit the spread of the coronavirus. But the Pennsylvania state legislature, beginning with the state house and now the state senate, have voted on and adopted a resolution that purports, anyway, to override the governor's stay-at-home order. I have in front of me the Hill's report by Zach Burdick, reporting on the Senate's action, which was the second of the two houses. Both passed this measure. We'll see what it means. Or eventually we'll see what it means, because this article doesn't predict the future necessarily. The Pennsylvania State Senate on Wednesday sent a bill that would partially lift the lockdown on most of the state's businesses to Governor Tom Wolf's desk. The measure, Senate Bill 613, which is amazing because somehow I thought the House passed that one first. Maybe they didn't move it first. I guess the Senate must have sent it to the House. House amended it, sent it back to the Senate. Senate says fine. They would require the governor's office to align with federal guidelines in determining which businesses will be allowed to reopen during the pandemic, allowing all those that can safely operate with mitigation strategies under CDC and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency guidelines. Maybe it's not quite as radical as all that. It doesn't lift the whole lockdown. It just says Pennsylvania should be in compliance with federal guidelines, which is weird because, again, there's the federalism issue here. And also the federal government is non-functioning. So, whatever. Anyway, the measure passed the Senate 29-21 on Wednesday after passing the state House 107-95 on Tuesday. So these are, I was initially confused because of the word override. It's not a veto override that they're talking about here. These numbers presumably wouldn't make it through veto override procedures in Pennsylvania. Although, again, my initial thinking was, wow, that's weird. I guess they don't require a 2/3 supermajority like the federal government does to override the governor, because when the House voted 107-95, I thought, well, that's a fail. But I see now it's just overriding his orders. The Republican Senate also approved a bill, by the way, that would allow county governments to implement their own plans to reopen independent of the state's plan. So we're really getting it from both sides, from the Republicans on this one. If anybody has a plan that works, we will attack it from above and below. The Democrat, or whether it works or not, it's the plan of a Democrat, and that's why we're going to do it. You see what happens here? The governor issues a stay-at-home order, and they pass one measure that says, well, no, your orders need to be in compliance with the federal government, which at least makes a certain amount of sense from one side. But to also pass another bill that says, by the way, you also should be in compliance with county governments, and county governments can do their own thing, whether they like you or not. So, one, the state has to be in compliance with the federal government, but counties can do whatever they want regardless of what the state does. Isn't that something? The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, DLCC, condemned the move, which comes the same day protesters in Michigan and Ohio demonstrated in favor of reopening without observing social distancing guidelines. We heard that story from Greg. I think that's probably all we really need to pull out of this one. So I imagine we'll start to see similar bills considered in states where there are Democratic governors and Republican legislatures, and we'll see whether they have any effect and whether they're challenged in court or whatever else can happen along the way. All right, jumping back into Pocket and moving around here. Let's see. There's a couple other things I wanted to make you aware of. Yes. I saw first at Tegan Goddard's Political Wire, and then he, of course, linked through to the source he was using for the story, which was the Washington Post. The Washington Post has the more detailed of the stories, but Tegan Goddard always boils it down to its essence. White House sought masks while discouraging public. This based off of the Washington Post story. Their headline, as U.S. discouraged mask use for public, White House team raced to secure face coverings from Taiwan, to add another wrinkle, for senior staff. In other words, while they were telling you masks don't matter, they won't protect you anyway, don't bother, etc., they were basically saying, go get us some masks. We don't want any of this stupid virus. All the other suckers can drop dead for all we care. Carol Leonig, Elizabeth Dwoskin, not Dworkin, but Dwoskin, and John Hudson reporting this one for the Washington Post. And we'll read a little bit of it so we can get the interesting twist about Taiwan out there. In mid-March, a National Security Council team rushed to address what they saw as a threat to the U.S. government's ability to function amid the advancing pandemic, lack o' masks. Basically. Alarmed by the small cash and the growing signs of an acute shortage of protective gear in the United States, you may have caught Trump yesterday at his press conference spinning that into, when I took over, the cupboards were bare. The shelves of the national stockpile were empty. They weren't. But he also is the guy who says, when I became president, the army didn't have any bullets, but I got, amazing, crazy-ass story. But okay. Alarmed by the small cash and growing signs of acute shortage of protective gear, a senior NSC official turned to a foreign government for help, according to people familiar with the situation. The effort resulted in the donation of hundreds of thousands of surgical masks from Taiwan, which had plentiful domestic production and had sharply curtailed the spread of the coronavirus on the island. The bulk of Taiwan's goodwill shipment went to the Strategic National Stockpile, but 3,600 masks were set aside for the White House. Yeah, for White House staff and officials, administration officials said. While the administration had detailed pandemic response plans, somehow those did not include maintaining a supply of masks for White House personnel. That's an amazing thing too, right? So as Trump tells you, the shelves were empty. We had no bullets. I didn't know what to do. There was less in the national strategic supply, or what do they call it, stockpile, than there were perhaps supposed to be or would have been optimal. But what's amazing, I guess the biggest indication that it wasn't simply, well, we were left with this and we didn't know what to do. The clearest indication that they really didn't know what they were doing at all with respect to how to handle this virus was that they didn't even take any portion of them for themselves, which could, in a normal circumstances, perhaps be, maybe you could interpret it as that was a noble thing to do. Well, we didn't want to grab them all for ourselves. That would look terrible politically. But in fact, they had the worst of both worlds. They did want to grab them all for themselves, regardless, but were too incompetent to do so. I think that's pretty amazing. Anyway, so like they said, bulk of the shipment went to the Strategic National Stockpile, but 3,600 masks eventually in the emergency shipment got set aside for the White House itself. While the administration, oh yes, we read this part. Let's see. So, a White House spokesperson disputed the notion that the complex that is the White House, I guess, did not have a sufficient supply of masks, but declined to say how many were on hand or why the NSC turned to a foreign government for donation. So, it's a lie. The urgent appeal to Taiwan on March 14th highlights a stark conflict between the Trump administration's stance then on the use of masks and the race behind the scenes to obtain them for key White House personnel. At the time, the U.S. government was discouraging the public from wearing masks, saying healthy people didn't need them and the gear should be saved for frontline medical workers most at risk of infection. Because of that, the CDC and the White House was not issuing masks to its staff, according to two officials. But inside the NSC, a top deputy was convinced that face coverings should be used more broadly to protect both his team and the public at large. But he took care of one of those two, and not the other. The resulting arrangement he struck with Taipei made thousands of masks available for White House staff use 2 weeks before the administration reversed policy and advised that citizens should broadly begin wearing cloth face coverings in public. I will say this, again, under normal circumstances and with a normal president, it wouldn't surprise me at all that they say, well, the president is a fairly central figure here. We do want to keep him healthy so that he can help the American people through this thing. But this president doesn't want to or care about helping the American people through it. So, the argument is a little weaker. But ordinarily you would say, yeah, you are going to have to set aside some scarce resources for the White House, and it's going to look elitist, but the White House really does need to function. That's true. The problem, of course, arises where they say, yeah, you don't need any masks, and then you actually are scrambling for masks. Oh, everything's going to be fine. I used secret inside information to sell all my stocks, but don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, and you don't need masks. But I just bought stock in mask companies. And then, of course, just sort of the idea of 2 weeks before you reverse the policy, right? And when they did reverse the policy, everybody said, masks, where the hell are we supposed to get masks? There aren't any to be had. Now we have to have masks? And what are we supposed to do? And the White House says, I don't know. We bought ours. When we were telling everybody you didn't need them, I bought them. Now that I've got them, you need them. Can't have these, sew your own. But if I had told everybody that they needed masks, while I knew that I needed a mask, then my masks would have been harder to get and more expensive. And that's why we told you all not to get masks. So we could buy them. The stock market's going to be fine. Everybody invest. I sold, but you do. You invest. You don't need masks. Right. So they kept the prices down. and got what they needed. The episode reveals how some top White House officials were pushing for a wider embrace of masks early on to help slow the infection's spread. Trump resisted endorsing such guidance, and even when he gave it, said he wouldn't do it, right? The subject of a sharp debate between his advisors and government health experts, and even after doing so, declared that he himself would not wear one, but some NSC aides believe masks should be widely available to help contain the outbreak. They discovered in early March that there weren't enough on stock for all personnel in the White House complex, according to an administration official. The White House Military Office, which oversees the medical unit, is responsible for girding the White House for a crisis, including supplying necessary protective equipment and ensuring the continuity of government operations. What they do? I don't know. Nothing, I guess. The White House said the office had sufficient supplies to protect the president, the first family, and essential personnel, which is great, I guess. I wondered whether they estimated that based on, well, if they all shelter in place, we got them covered. But if they start flying to Bedminster for Passover, we might have our resources strained. I don't know. While we would never discuss the specifics about safety and security measures at the White House, the medical unit and military office have the needed supplies to execute on long-standing continuity of government plans that essential personnel are protected by and briefed on as soon as they arrive. And quite frankly, it's ignorant, naive, or intentionally dishonest for anyone to suggest otherwise, spokesman and liar Hogan Gidley said in a statement, which went like this. You're all idiots, and how dare you suggest that? Psst, Taiwan, send us 3,600 masks. I mean, they deny that happened, sure. Whatever. The White House has enough masks for all senior personnel who are deemed essential to continue operating the government. A small subset of the staff, said another administration official who said that roughly 3/4 of the White House staff are teleworking because of the crisis. At the time the NSC secured masks from Taiwan, it was not CDC guidance for all staff to have them, so in the same way you couldn't request a test if you were asymptomatic and had no cause for concern, we weren't given masks from our stockpiles at the time, the official said. If mask wearing became mandatory, we'd have enough for staff still in the building to protect them and could obtain more from a federal agency stockpile, which of course they just said they replenished from Taiwan. When Taiwan later announced its mask donation, it didn't mention that a portion of it was going to the White House staff. A joint statement between the two countries said they would collaborate on exchanges of medical supplies and equipment. They may not have known. The deal, this is the interesting part, was sensitive in Taiwan, which had banned commercial exports of masks to protect supply for its citizens. China, which of course claims the island as part of its territory, called the transfer of masks to the United States during a pandemic despicable behavior and said it was provoking a confrontation with the motherland. A spokesperson for the Taiwanese government declined to discuss private diplomatic discussions with the U.S. government, but pointed to public statements about its shipments of medical supplies to the U.S. After its initial shipment of masks for the U.S. government, Taiwan late last month announced it was donating 10 million masks to foreign countries to help combat the pandemic. It's now expected to send 3.5 million masks to the United States, earmarked for emergency medical workers. So there you go. This was also, I guess, just to put it, place it in time for you. The search at the White House for more protective masks came amid a blizzard, not a blid-a-mizzard, but amid a blizzard of conflicting messages and division within the administration. This is about the time when Trump was saying, it's going to disappear one day. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. And he made that little curve wave sign with his hand there. So, well, there you go. I mean, I'm going to stop it right there. But interesting, and also an interesting note about the sensitivity of Taiwan doing this outside of the Chinese permission structure, as they usually act. But just another one of those weird divides that needs to be noted. And places where strange complications can arise. There's much more to the story, and I think we've got everything we need out of that one. And moving on so that we can jump around a little bit again. I will note for the record that there's a new story also in the Washington Post about another pirate outfit plundering PPE and making a killing on it. So we have another party to watch here. This under the headline in the Washington Post of, "In coronavirus scramble for N95 masks, Trump administration pays premium to third-party vendors." Isaac Stanley Becker, Desmond Butler, and Nick Miroff on the byline here. The Trump administration has awarded, get this one, bulk contracts to third-party vendors in recent weeks in a scramble to obtain N95 respirator masks. So far, all right, third-party vendors sounds maybe a little shady, but okay. Otherwise, we're getting masks, right? Well, the government has paid the companies more than $5 per unit, nearly 8 times what it would have spent in January and February when U.S. intelligence agencies warned of a looming global pandemic, procurement records show. So, in other words, not just the fact that Trump put us all at risk by ignoring the warnings in January and February and doing nothing, but he also could have gotten that advance warning. And just like the insider trading that they did with the stocks, he could have done one thing that would have been legal and helpful, which is buy up supplies of N95 respirator masks before the world knew that they would be at a premium and being asked to pay 8 times more. But instead, he walked away and didn't buy anything. Imagine that. He had the chance to make a great deal, and he missed it. How weird is that? It's so strange for a guy who loves to make great deals. You know about the N95 masks and why they're important. Demand for the masks has created a frenzied, freewheeling global market. That's a nice way of putting it. That has pitted U.S. states against the federal government and rich nations against poorer ones. Administration officials leaped into the fray late, then embarked on a voracious spending spree. Though U.S. federal agencies made a small number of relatively modest purchases before the second half of March, the government has ordered more than $600 million worth of masks since then. Large U.S. companies such as Honeywell and 3M have received the biggest orders, but the Trump administration also has signed high-dollar deals with third-party vendors selling masks for many times the standard price. Shady enough all by itself, of course, but you might expect that could happen if somebody's a medical supply dealer and they happen to have a serious and significant stockpile on hand and they want to make money. They're going to charge more, right, and sell these things off. Well, that would be understandable. But wait, there's more. FEMA awarded a $55 million contract for N95s this month to Panthera Worldwide LLC. I don't know whether they say it as Panthera or Pantera, even though there's an H in there, but Panthera. Panthera Worldwide LLC, which sounds like the kind of place you would go for a mask, right? No, it sounds like something different. And in fact, it is something different. It is ordinarily in the business of tactical training. Everyone knows how cool it is to be a tactical trainer. That means we train people to shoot each other, right? One of its owners said last year that Panthera's parent company had not had any employees since May of 2018, which means they weren't doing anything, according to sworn testimony. It also has no history of manufacturing or procuring medical equipment, according to a review of records produced as a result of legal disputes involving the company and its affiliates. Panthera Worldwide's parent company filed for bankruptcy last fall, but this ought to help. $55 million for a payment for things you don't have and aren't in the business of procuring. And the LLC is no longer recognized in Virginia, where it has its main office, following non-payment of fees, which according to the Virginia Code results in the existence of a limited liability company being automatically canceled. James V. Punelli, one of the company's executives, said he is working his military contacts to obtain the masks. That is to say, it's not some happy accident. They weren't profiteers who ran around to dollar stores and bought all the masks and now seek to resell them to the government. They simply said, give us $55 million and we'll sell you masks. The government gave it to them and they said, now we should get about the business of finding some masks. The gallery likes that one. I don't. It sucks. But again, War Dogs, but for PPE. This is, if you haven't seen the movie and have a chance to get it somewhere, if it's streaming, if you get it on demand, if you can break into an old video store and steal it, I don't know. You should see it. This is exactly what's going on here. It's just, look, the government needs to buy masks, so whoever has masks to sell to the government can make a killing. And then they said, I would like to make a killing. We should sell masks to the government. Never, of course, stopping to consider, how will we get masks? I don't know. And we haven't read the rest of the story yet. Maybe we can skim it and find out how they do get it. But I have a pretty good idea that we learned about that 2 weeks ago when we learned that Jared Kushner's people were stealing masks from other countries and turning them over to these three parties. These are stolen masks. Amazing. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio, here in the Kagro in the Morning Diner. Breakfast is being made in the background, so that'll entice many of you to think about fond memories of ordering breakfast out. See, there you go. Some clinking of dishes. Anyway, we're in the middle of discussing War Dogs for PPE, another actor joining Blue Flame Medical, was it the other day, that we found out about. Now Panthera Worldwide, LLC. It's amazing. Not only, Panthera, I guess, because dangerous animal. Rawr. And they used to do tactical training. Worldwide, because they don't exist anywhere in the world. That is also a good part of the name. They lost their LLC status in Virginia, though the story goes on to say that they reapplied in Delaware instead. And worldwide, meaning we're not incorporated in any particular state, and we have no contacts anywhere for any of the things we're trying to do now. So this is a tactical training company that accepted $55 million contract for procurement of the thing that nobody can get and that they have no experience manufacturing or procuring. Why not a contract for unobtainium? I don't know. No one was bidding on it. But here, we're going to get those masks that no one can get, and that we have no experience with finding, making, or faking. But let's do it, because why not? $55 million is a powerful incentive, I guess. I don't know why anybody thought they could do this. Again, remember, they had no employees since May of 2018. That's another thing. I guess, really honestly, if you have just tremendous confidence in your ability to procure stuff, even though everyone in the world is trying to get it and can't, I guess you could say, like a CEO might say, I trust our people. We have the best and brightest employees in the world, really can-do people, and we can do things that other people can't. Who are these people? I don't know. I don't have any of them either. So let me get this straight. You don't have masks, you don't have experience getting masks, and you don't have any people who could even gain experience getting masks in trial by fire. Yes. That is worth a good $55 million in my book. Let's get started. Of course, ultimately the story here, and I don't know if it's found out in here or not, if it's a surprise ending, but obviously the story here is who the F owns Panthera Worldwide LLC, and what's the connection to Trump? Let's just get to the bottom of it here. All right. So no history of manufacturing or procuring equipment. They filed for bankruptcy last fall. They lost their limited liability corporation status in Virginia because they didn't even pay their fees, which is like $100. Where were we? Oh, James Pinelli, right, said he's working his military contacts to obtain the masks. And they're like, bullets, guns, yes. Masks, that I don't know. We've done DOD medical training over the years, he says. And I don't think they really have. But he says that. And through those contacts with that community were brought sources of supply in order to assist in the COVID-19 response, Punelli said in a text message to the Washington Post referring to the Defense Department. We made the connection with FEMA and offered these supplies to them. All right. Asked about delivery of the masks, Punelli said, we will provide these masks before May 1st for certain, in full, and with very high quality product. He said the company is registered as an LLC in Delaware and allowed its Virginia registration to lapse, quote, because we're not doing business in Virginia. Okay. I mean, they're not doing business anywhere, but okay. According to its website, Panthera offers, quote, elite training and mission support, unquote, for the U.S. military and other agencies. But in 2018, it entered into a 42-year lease, handing over its principal asset, a 750-acre training facility in West Virginia, to a separate company that now operates the site. The facility features a mock village for training exercises in anti-terrorism and tactical operations. You get to go out there and shoot guns and be cool. They don't have masks. They're not in that line of business, said Robert Starer, S-T-A-R-E-R, Starer, I don't know. And he says he's a Virginia businessman of some kind who leased the training center from Panthera's owners. Is it possible they have a relationship with someone in the world who could provide those masks? Who knows? Maybe. Starer is now suing the company's two executives, Punelli and Raymond C. Jones. You can all Google Punelli and Raymond C. Jones and see if they're connected in some way to Trump or through some other third party or Giuliani or God knows who. Anyway, Starer is suing these two nuts, alleging they overstated the extent of their contracts and customer base, resulting in financial losses for his company. In a complaint filed in Virginia's Hanover County Circuit Court, Starer alleges that the two men misrepresented estimated revenue as actual cash payments based on existing contracts, causing him to suffer cash losses in 2018 and 2019. Punelli and Jones have not responded to the lawsuit, according to an attorney who represents Starer. Jones did not respond to a request for comment. Punelli said of the lawsuit, those frivolous claims are being addressed in due course, which is not an answer. The FEMA contract with Panthera, which was awarded without competitive bidding, because why would you have that, has a start date of April 1st, which is now 2 weeks in the past. According to a summary, Lizzie Litzow, a FEMA spokeswoman, I think we've actually heard her name before, said the Panthera contract is for 10 million masks for $55 million, $5.50 a mask. Adding, Panthera is not a manufacturer. They are a distributor of N95 masks. No, they are not. But FEMA says so anyway, so trust them in an emergency, right? Blowing FEMA's credibility on anything is a terrible, terrible idea. The price that FEMA is paying per mask, about $5.50, I guess it could be but 10 million masks, $55 million, that is $5.50 a mask. I don't know what else they're subtracting or adding. Is significantly higher than what the government pays companies such as 3M, which charges as little as 63 cents per N95 mask, with an average cost of about $1.50 for more advanced models, according to a price index. Prestige Ameritech, the largest domestic mask manufacturer, why ask them for any, is charging FEMA about 80 cents per mask for the government's order of 12 million N95 respirators, part of a $9.5 million contract that started in April 7th. So again, one contractor they're working with who is the largest domestic mask manufacturer, $9.5 million, 12 million masks. Panthera, which doesn't have any masks, doesn't make them, and may not know how to get them, and was never in the mask business, $55 million for 10 million masks. what in the F is going on here and who needs to get punched in the face to straighten this out. I don't know. But I have some names I could suggest for you. Beyond the premium the federal government is paying to Panthera, the decision to award a contract to an insolvent organization with no apparent expertise in a given field, or it says in the given field, really in any given field, because their given field, the other given field they had was tactical training, but they went bankrupt doing it. So really, I think it's fair to say no apparent expertise in any given field, no matter what you might give, struck experts as unusual. Thank you, Washington Post. It did. It struck me as unusual, too. Something is amiss here, said Chuck Hagel, former defense secretary and Republican senator from Nebraska. This is not how the government procures training or any type of supplies. You just wouldn't do business with somebody like that, unless, of course, you saw War Dogs and thought it was awesome, or Punelli and Raymond C. Jones were management classmates in Harvard with Jared Kushner, or something like that, and said, we'll kick, $10 million in cash back to you. Maybe. In its bankruptcy filing, Panthera Enterprises estimated that it had as many as 99 creditors. I got 99 creditors. And said its liabilities could be as high as $50 million. It seems like a $55 million contract is just what the doctor ordered for people with debts of $50 million. Punelli said Panthera Worldwide, quote, has no significant debt, except for the $50 million. But both companies are jointly owned by him and Jones and use the same facilities, according to court records. Well, that's interesting. Panthera Enterprises as distinct, I didn't notice that, from Panthera Worldwide LLC. Panthera Enterprises, which is owned by the two of them, it has $50 million worth of debts, but Panthera Worldwide has none. Interesting. And if it's anything like the way Trump works things, Panthera Worldwide, Panthera Enterprises was created to buy the debt of Panthera Worldwide, so that you could say Panthera Worldwide has no significant debt, although Panthera Enterprises does, you see. But you can't blame us for that. Do we own both? Yes, but shut up. Founded as 10X Group, TENX. 1010 Group? 10X? I don't know. Founded as 10X Group in 2011. Oh boy, ready for this one? The gallery's listening. The parent company is incorporated in Delaware, but has its primary office in Leesburg, Virginia. Oh boy. Well, that's the county seat for my home county, and puts us in range of Trump National Golf Club. When we heard the other week that the Secret Service had signed the emergency designated contract for, what was it, like $40-something thousand or 400, I can't remember what the price on it was, but the emergency contract to rent golf carts at Trump National for the Secret Service to follow Trump around, even though he allegedly wasn't golfing during this time, et cetera, et cetera. I looked into the contract and the people behind it, and they too all live in this area. And I guess the guy whose company got the contract used to be the golf pro at Trump National at some point, and I guess he no longer is. So, I mean, that was kind of like, okay, that could be shady, but who else do you think would be renting golf carts to the Secret Service at that course other than the golf pro? Although it's interesting that he arranged it well. We need to get more carts in here. So he didn't use the assets of the club to get more carts to then rent them to the Secret Service. He formed his own golf cart company, bought a stock of golf carts and rented them to a captive Secret Service and made it a private gain. And I don't know whether that's something he had arranged with Trump. I don't know if he's a great businessman and had this idea all by himself and Trump didn't mind, or Trump told him, I'll tell you what, I want you to, we're going to need these golf carts. Why don't you do this? And then I don't have to pay you very much in salary because you can make a killing on the outside. I don't know what the deal was. Anyway, here, I wouldn't be surprised. Now I guess we'll find out that Punelli and Raymond Jones are members of Trump National, and this is how they got the deal. And that's why this stupid company that has no business supplying any of this stuff, but is based for some strange reason right here within a short drive of the golf club, is getting $55 million to supply $10 million masks, while a major manufacturer is getting $9.5 million to supply 12 million. All right. So, founded as 10X Group in 2011, now incorporated in Delaware, primary office Leesburg, Virginia. It has received a handful of federal contracts in recent years, primarily for training exercises such as high-risk driving, according to a contract summary from 2018. I think that's supposed to be like emergency driving, like if you're a security detail and you're getting shot at, how do you drive? Now, I wouldn't describe the training exercise as high-risk driving. You're trying to minimize risk, but you're in a high-risk situation. How do you get the hell out of it? High-risk driving, I could teach you that. Watch this. Speed and go backwards. $55 million, please. But Punelli said in sworn testimony in October 2019, and anytime here's another thing, by the way, if you're looking to contract with somebody, you might say, have you ever had to give sworn testimony for anything? Yes. We'll get back to you. Don't call us. We'll call you. People get sued all the time, but all right. In sworn testimony, that's what this is about. Obviously getting sued. The subsidiary now under contract with FEMA focused primarily on activities outside the country, hence worldwide, I guess, was bringing in no income, though. That's the testimony. You can't sue us. We have no money. Not right now, he told a U.S. attorney who asked whether there were any earnings. So there's two red flags. Have you ever had to give sworn testimony? Yeah. But I had to give it to my neighbor because say I am Rand Paul. He came over and tackled and pummeled me. It's in a private civil suit, in other words. Have you ever had to give sworn testimony to a U.S. attorney? Yes. Okay, that's criminal in all likelihood and problematic in its own right. Litzau, the spokesperson for FEMA, said in response to questions about FEMA's contract with Panthera, the agency is bound by law to follow federal acquisition requirements and processes, and did so in this case. Per these federal acquisition requirements and processes, the contracting officer conducted a contractor responsibility determination. That pulled it out of his hat. But, that's the kind of cover we give the government for a lot of operations. If you'll certify it, then I guess we just have to buy it. Let's see. The Department of Health and Human Services began gathering information on global supplies of N95s in January and posted a formal notice on February 24th to companies that it was preparing to place large orders, according to a department spokeswoman. On March 21st, HHS bought 600 million N95s from 5 companies, with the largest orders going to 3M and Honeywell. If the U.S. government had attempted to make large purchases before then, it would have thrown global markets out of whack. As they got more and more out of whack, right? Said Stephanie Bialik, a spokeswoman assigned to the agency's Strategic National Stockpile. It is never the intent of the SNS to disrupt the supply chain when supply is able to meet demand, even if demand is high. She said, this is not making any sense to me. Making large government purchases at that time likely would have disrupted supplies. Whatever. No, it really wouldn't have. Among members of the public, too, demand for masks has climbed as CDC has recommended Americans wear masks, yada, yada. On Wednesday, Cuomo said he'd issue an executive order requiring them for all New York residents. We've seen other states follow suit. I think Maryland went to that yesterday. Purchasing, which I will call the Candace Owens Act, I think, because Candace Owens has been occupying her quarantine time complaining about the fact that she went to a Whole Foods and didn't have a mask, and they said you can't come in without a mask, and this is tyranny. And she was explaining how by not explaining how. And everybody, of course, reminded her, I thought you were all into the private property rights, and why can't they run their business the way they see fit? And what if it was Hobby Lobby and they said you couldn't come in without a Bible? You'd believe it. But okay. Purchasing records show the Trump administration has placed at least $628 million worth of orders for masks in recent weeks. I'm sure that didn't disrupt the global supply chain. HHS has placed more than $400 million in mask orders, and the Department of Veterans Affairs has placed orders worth about $82 million. Another story waiting in the wings, as one of our friends of the show has been sending information about the state of affairs among the VA and how many veterans under their care have been coming down in, exponentially increasing numbers with the coronavirus. They do need masks there. I'm telling you, that's true. But one of the biggest buyers is FEMA, which has transformed itself into the supply chain manager for the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which is not really a conversion, actually, is it? The agency proposed a deal in recent weeks to obtain an additional 114 million N95 masks from, but all from one place, Nutratrade, Australia, whose website says it specializes in bulk shipments of masks? No. Gloves? No. Respirators? No. Grains, dairy products, and other foodstuffs. Nutratrade. Yeah. The FEMA proposal was for $591 million worth of N95 masks at an average cost of $5.19 per mask, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post. Again, it's interesting. Like people who are not in the business are getting the premium. And I imagine this here is where we need one of those, well, how did this happen article? Because if they sat at the table and said, well, how much do you want per mask? Well, $5 per mask. $5, that's crazy. 3M is selling them to us for 83 cents. Yes, well, it'll be more costly for us because we don't have any and we don't make them. And we're in the business of shipping dairy products from Australia. I see. Now you're talking sense, says the contracting officer. Here you go. What are you talking about? You just say, no, sorry, thank you. We'll look elsewhere. I don't know how you go and make these things, unless it's just cronyism. I would love to have the explanation and then execute the person who's lying about it. The agency said late Wednesday that it does not have a contract with Nutratrade Australia. So, okay, no story. Again, just to backtrack because I distracted us. Biggest buyer, FEMA. Agency proposed a deal in recent weeks. Okay, proposed 114 million masks from Nutratrade. Now the agency says, we don't have a contract with Nutratrade. Maybe we proposed it, but we didn't execute it. A representative for Nutratrade reached Wednesday, declined to respond to questions about the proposed contract. So we don't know whether they have it, they don't have it. Biggest buyer is FEMA. They're buying 114 million masks. Don't worry, everybody. We're buying 114 million masks. Are you? I don't know whether we are or not. Okay. So again, where are the tests? Where are the masks? Don't worry, we're buying them. Are you? Maybe not. Who are you buying them from? Somebody who doesn't have any. This is really going very well. FEMA is importing most of the medical supplies through a process the Trump administration calls piracy and thievery. They call it Project Airbridge. We have another name for it. And it uses chartered cargo flights. Maybe you know what? That's another thing, right? Where'd you get the planes? Panthera Worldwide. Do they have any? No. That's, I guess, the next story coming. Using chartered cargo flights to slash delivery times and steer shipments directly to hospitals, except then they're not doing it. They're stealing them, and they don't exist in the first place, and maybe we have contracts, and maybe we don't. What is going on here? This would make a very interesting investigation for Congress, but they're not here, and they're not coming back. The government pays the cost of the flights, but it hands over approximately half the supplies to large private medical supply companies, or even dairy companies, apparently, which then distribute them to their clients, according to FEMA, which is lying. And so I'd like to know what actually happens to them. Critics of the arrangement, like me, say it amounts to a lavish giveaway to private companies. I also say it's piracy and maybe also fraud. But administration officials say they're just trying to get badly needed supplies to hospitals as quickly as possible. I guess another part that I don't understand in all this is You might say, well, it is, why, for instance, are we contracting with NutraTrade and Panthera when we also do have contracts with 3M and Honeywell and a couple other actual suppliers? And I guess they might say, well, you're exceeding our supply. You're just going to have to find another. We can't meet that demand. You're going to have to find it from other people. But the people that they find can't meet that demand either. I mean, they don't make anything, and they're supplying a major number of these things. So I guess if it's imaginary, why not pay 80 cents per imaginary mask for 3M to not produce them, as opposed to $5.50 to Panthera to not produce or procure them? I'll be astonished if they do show up. I guess at some point they might. And I guess the only plan that could work here is steal them from 3M's plants in China, give them to Panthera, and then Panthera can say, we did it, even though you will have done it for free by stealing them. And Panthera, why do they even get a chance to charge the government $55 million at all? And the answer must be because my friends need to steal money too. And if there's a better answer, come and give it. Although who you'd give it to, I don't know, because Congress, they're, effed off to their homes and are sitting on their hands doing nothing. Let's see. So critics say it's a lavish giveaway because that's what it is. Administration officials say we're just trying to get supplies to hospitals. All the traditional procurement rules are out the window, said Rick Grimm, executive director of the National Institute of Government Purchasing, which trains and advises state and local governments on procurement. And by the way, sells masks. Rick, why not say so if you want to get rich? Grimm said that when the market is unstable, it can invite price manipulation or the possibility you may end up with an inferior product you can't use. And that's also a possibility too. I don't know what happens. How do we find out if Panthera Worldwide isn't stapling rubber bands to napkins and saying they're N95s? I don't know. Jennifer Ehrlich, spokeswoman for 3M, said the company had not raised its prices and has taken aggressive legal action against vendors selling its products at a significant markup. Maybe that's how we'll solve this. The company is planning to increase its output from about 1.1 billion masks per year to 2 billion during the next 12 months, Ehrlich said. The company has filed several lawsuits within the past week against companies it says have been engaged in price gouging and fraudulent sales, including one company that tried to sell 45 million 3M masks to New York City officials at bloated prices, and another that tried to sell tens of millions of likely non-existent 3M N95 respirators at grossly inflated prices to the Division of Strategic National Stockpile, all while falsely affiliating itself with 3M. So I guess that's the other trick too, right? You form a company, you say, whatever, name it whatever you want. It doesn't have to do anything with masks. And then you say, I can sell you masks. And how do we, a smart person says, how do we know you can get masks? Because I'm affiliated with 3M. All right, here's $55 million. And then they say, I don't have any masks. And I don't know what happens. I guess at some point we'll wait and see. There's just going to be, how did the stockpile get to have empty shelves in the first place? We bought non-existent masks. This is really going to be a hell of a story one day. It's just that 100,000 of you are going to die before you find out the answer. So I guess that works itself out too. Maybe that's the government's plan. The most people who care about this will be dead before the answers finally emerge. All right. Well, that's about it in terms of the amount of time we have here. Those I thought were some seriously important stories. Reese Witherspoon and the plundering of PPE around the world. There's more, of course, and we'll come back tomorrow and share a bunch of those as well, including, I think, my intention is to tell you a little bit more about Thurston Howell III that we heard about yesterday. Congressman Trey Hollingsworth, J.A. Hollingsworth III. I found an interview with him through Der Wooter, our good Twitter friend, a Forbes interview with him a couple of years ago when he was back a 34-year-old businessman turned congressman. And, we got the idea that guy might be full of crap yesterday. And the interview helps reveal that. I don't know if that'll qualify as top story or not tomorrow. But somebody remind me that I intended to share that with you. And at the very least, I can put it in the Friday roundup for you to read on your own. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. More other good stuff here, including, I should have included this one in today's roundup. Maybe we'll save it for Friday instead. Lots of people, I think, finally catching on to the idea that this is bullshit of the highest order, and that millions and millions of dollars are being stolen, which might not piss you off all by itself, but they're being stolen, and in exchange, it's all being done in exchange for non-existent masks, and I think probably also testing equipment at some point we'll learn is also suffering from the same fraud, and we're never going to get out of this thing, and they're going to reopen everything, reopen the economy in the face of zero masks and zero tests and all of our money being gone. And, I guess the hope is that voters who will be angered by that will die before the election, or at least before we end up counting all the mail-in ballots, if we actually get around to doing things that way. I am reminded that we are in no way prepared for this. We still don't know the results in total of the California primary, because they're still counting their mail-in ballots. If we did nationwide mail-in voting, we may not know who won that election until 2 years hence. I got no idea. We'll be right back.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, what's going on around the world? Justice Putnam will fill you in on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. Lots of domestic news, of course, but let's throw in the international flavor. Russia carried out an anti-satellite missile test yesterday morning, and guess what? No government yet in Israel. Still working on that one. We'll see you tomorrow.